The world is shifting. Inspiration is everywhere. We learn about the best in ourselves from each other. I'm Will McPherson, and you've hit rock bottom. Building your health and happiness from the ground on up. Today's podcast is on interesting ways to look at life's risks. My expert guest is Brian Murphy. A rare breed, he's a lead loss consultant for QBE North America and will regale us with stories from being a volunteer firefighter. Best way to follow or connect with Brian is on LinkedIn. Brian, beyond doing this, right? He's going on well-being and health emergency calls with the village firefighters and EMTs, being a volunteer firefighter himself. So we're sleeping, right? Heads on the pillow, Z's are going on. What do you want us to know about the most common types of calls?
Oh gosh.
Well, what happened? What was going on? The most common, right? I'm not talking about a weird one. Just another call, and what was going on?
Well, I must clarify that I am technically retired, but I did it for about 20 some years.
20 years.
And the part-timers like myself got to keep our helmets. In most fire departments, the bread and butter is now EMS or medical calls, because as society has gotten more fire safe, less people are smoking. Things are built better. Well, are your buildings now, most commercial buildings in at least suburban urban areas, building codes require them to have fire
Mine's
sprinkler
new.
systems.
My condo building is built in the late 90s, so it has like big, thick, fireproof walls, right?
That dovetails into the fact that the fires are down, so emergency medical calls are up. In our fire department in Batavia, Illinois, where I'm at, our fire department, our call run the year I retired, it was just before COVID. We had about 4,100 calls to 2 fire stations. And at least, I think it was about 75% were EMS calls.
Right. So tell us about what was going on. I mean, so I'm envisioning some of the calls, right? Envision what was when you open up the door and you go, oh, this is a new one.
Oh boy, I don't know how many times I've said that. You just never know, right? Some of it, you pretty much learn to expect anything.
A lot of your calls involve the same people.
We call those frequent flyers. Yeah, there was a certain percentage.
And what were those types of calls like?
Unfortunately, a lot of them involved either mental health issues, because we would respond to assist the police department on that, and on those type of calls, or substance abuse and mental illness are go hand in hand.
Often the same, go hand in hand.
Exactly. So those calls could be difficult and trying, especially when you had to deal with kids. And the scary part is there was a higher percentage of younger folks, young adults, and even children with mental illnesses or substance abuse. And being in my town, and Batavia is a small kind of a Mayberry type town, a lot of people. We have 4 kids. So through having 4 kids, we know a lot of people. And you would occasionally, you'd recognize an address as you're being dispatched, like, is that so-and-so's house? And you pull up and it is so-and-so's house. And you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea whatever was going on there. So that was kind of tough sometimes, especially if it was a difficult call where maybe someone, died, passed away, suicide, things of that nature.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
And, professionally and legally, you're not supposed to, the HIPAA Act, if we're all familiar with that, you cannot really give names and talk about that. But fortunately, with my wife being, she's also very tied into our town, but she also knew that, you can't talk about that. She also works in healthcare, so she understands that. But I was able to talk about those kind of things when it was someone you knew really well who was either having a very bad day, so to speak, or if someone had passed away. Those kind of things you could talk a little bit more about when they passed away, because of course that's public knowledge. But there were many others where it was much more amusing, or the job satisfaction, especially in the emergency medical part about it, was what I loved the best, because you've made a very immediate difference in a person's life. And
immediately. Life altering, within 20 minutes, you change the direction of their life from the underground to back up above ground. That's going to be amazing.
It was very satisfying. And I'll tell you this, sometimes it's the small things in life that really for me, it's the small things in life that sometimes really make the biggest impact on you, or you get the most out of it. So, we've done all our different things. People have been in really, really bad shape, and you do all these interventions and things of that nature to get them back, and all this, a big team effort and things like that. But I'll tell you right now, and it may sound sappy, I'll never forget this call. It was a lady whose elderly mom was living with her, and elderly mom at 2 a.m. slipped and fell, and we would go on a lot of these frequent flyer call, right? She must have slid out of bed or something. And they call us, and it's a lift assist. And we also do a quick assessment, make sure they're okay. And she was fine. We got her back into her bed, and her daughter was there, and she had tears in her eyes, and she was so happy that we were there. And 3 big group burly firefighters, 2 a.m, looked like we just woke up because we did, and she asked us all, "Can you give me a hug?" And I'm getting choked up thinking about it because it still just affected me so much. It's like, I just need a hug from you guys. And like, we're all giving her this nice big hug, and she's patting us on the back. And it's like, we just all walked out of there. We were all quiet, and I could tell it affected all of us in such a positive way, because it was just, we didn't think it was any big deal. Like, we do this 100 times, 100 times a month. Right. But that made such an impact on her, and made her, you could just tell, it just relieved her. The stress went out of her eyes, and she was so grateful. And that's priceless to me. That if I never went on another call after that, I would have probably been just fine. It was,
all your calls for hoisting old ladies back on their beds. It's an easy job, Murph. I've got a question for you. I live in a densely populated area, and I see EMS calls. If the ambulance comes, and there's big old honking fire trucks following it. So what's up with that? I mean, why do you need a 20,000-pound fire truck following this ambulance? I mean,
actually, it's actually 65 to
60,000
pounds. Good. I get that question all the time, and I knew you were going to ask that question too. Yeah. Well, okay. Couple of reasons, and I'll try not to be the fire chief and give you the city council explanation.
No, don't make it light. But why are they? Why are they?
But there's 2 reasons. One, it all revolves around giving the best service delivery. So, an ambulance is going to have 2 people, right? So you figure, all but the most, easy calls, shall we say, where it's just a simple Band-Aid bruise, we're there, that sort of thing. A medical intervention nowadays in the EMS field, there's a lot that we can do, right? It's like basically bringing a small ER out to a person. That's what we're doing. And we're stabilizing them and then getting them to the hospital where they can have further treatment for whatever their malady is. So yes. Let's take a worst case scenario, right? Like some cardiac arrest, someone's their heart is stopped. So there are several things that need to be done. Someone needs to be doing chest compressions, the CPR. Another person needs to be opening their airway and intubating them. That's getting a tube down the throat into the lungs.
What about those electric zapper panels? I always wanted to do that.
The defibrillator, right?
Yes.
That's the easy part, actually.
I know. That's why I want to do it. It's fun.
So you have at least probably a need for at least 5 people to really do it correctly once you get going.
Okay. So the manpower is one of them. You need some, as you say, burly dudes to start compressing the chest and helping out with everything. So that's one. Okay, one reason. Yes,
that's one. Another is safety of the responders, because you have all sorts of ranges of size of people out there, and most injuries injuries in the EMS and the fire service are back injuries by far. It's just the lifting. And I couldn't tell you, large people always, my experience was large people would always have their heart attack in a 5x5 bathroom.
Of course.
So imagine that. So it's also to get people out. In fact, in our fire department and most of the fire departments out here, not only would the ambulance and the fire engine go, but the on-duty chief officer would go, and he would be the supervisor. And then also we would probably end up calling another fire engine for just the manpower to get that person out, clear furniture out of the way, this and that. So there's a lot that goes on, but the safety of the responder is also really important in that too, because obviously 2 people lifting a 600-pound person is not going to happen. And then you're still doing CPR on them and so on and so forth. So that's one of the reasons. And then the third reason is a service delivery standpoint. There's one more. So, if in your firehouse, say you have a fire engine and an ambulance, and the ambulance goes on a call and the fire engine is still there.
Yeah.
Well, most fire engines, at least in major metro areas that deliver EMS, right, that have an ambulance service or an EMS function, and I would say almost to a T every fire department nowadays, they're at least trained to the basic medical first responder level or all I'm talking about the people on the fire engine, right? Or they're trained all the way up to the paramedic level. So, like in our fire department, we have 2 fire stations. There's an ambulance at each, and it's a full paramedic unit, ER on wheels, right? So they can do just about anything. And our fire engines are basically full-fledged paramedic units that have all the equipment, all the drugs, all the, defibrillator, everything else. The only thing that they can't do is transport. So what makes that good is that if the ambulance in your district is out and there's another call, the engine can go roll out and start care immediately. Yeah. And then the ambulance might come from another town, back up, whatever. But we've still, like, if it's a cardiac arrest, we can keep going on that.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
What you're talking about is pretty interesting because my wife is from Chile, right? That's a long country in South America, long, skinny country. There are no ambulances. You are your ambulance. Pia's dad had something with his heart. He waited for like 45 minutes an hour. They finally said, get him in the car. Let's drive him. So indeed, at least the people we live, very fortunate to have all this manpower available to them. It's that is really nice to hear. Very good. Very good, sir. That is interesting. So I find out finally why all this equipment shows up for an EMS call. It's like, what the hell's going on? Don't these guys have anything better to do? Did we catch him on a pizza run or what? But so that's what happened. Brian, part of the show, right, is kind of is making the most out of the situation that you're in, right, and going a positive direction. It's kind of we talked about that in an emergency crisis, right? Intervention, come in, the life is altered to a positive direction, and do you want to tell us what major milestone happened in your life when you're around 22 years of age? What happened?
Oh yeah, from a health standpoint, was diagnosed. I think I was 22. You've done your research. Very good on the bio, Bill. All right. But diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. That's insulin dependent diabetes. It runs in our family. My sister's also diabetic too. She's a year younger than me. She was diagnosed in high school. And the old thought was, okay, usually you don't develop type 1 diabetes much out of your teens. Well, that's happening more and more as we've seen. But I developed that at the tail end of college.
Late bloomer. Yeah.
Late bloomer. It's been something obviously that is part of you, but it's really, I don't want to say it's been a positive, but I guess I could have to say it's been a positive way because it forces you, so to speak. Well, let me put it this way. Either you control it or it controls you. And if you control it, you're going to reap a lot of benefits, not just from having the diabetes go uncontrolled and have all the effects of uncontrolled diabetes, but you're going to hopefully eat healthier, not, be more cognizant of your weight. You're going to exercise and take care of yourself better. And then once you experience the positiveness of doing that, the benefits of that, it's kind of like one of those habit forming things, right? You do something, whatever they say, 15 times in a row, it becomes a habit. Well, doing that becomes a habit as well. And it's very difficult to slide backwards because it's so ingrained in doing it this way, and you realize the benefits on it. And psychologically, it keeps you a bit more on track. So yeah, that's been a big thing. And it's, it hasn't stood in the way of really me doing anything at all.
Doing anything? Are you kidding?
Except being a commercial airline pilot. I thought about that once, but overrated.
Overrated, yeah. Overrated. A lot of sucking in those jet fumes. I did that for about 8 years, and it ain't good for you. So, one thing is I've known Brian for over 40 years, and I can say it was definitely a life trajectory change. He wasn't overweight by any means, but he was, just a young guy doing his thing, and his life changed, and he got thinner, more exercise, everything changed, and I say for the better, and I consider this positive in Brian's life. There are maybe a few things he's got to deal with, but out of all of us, Brian's still water skiing. I think he's the only guy that still does it. Maybe Scott does it, but he's embraced it, embraced the challenge, and made a positive out of it. Yeah,
I'm just
he'll go home. Yeah, he's in traction for the next 3 weeks. He doesn't tell us about that, but
where's that bottle of Tylenol? I ate the other one last night. Yeah,
I bathe in aspirin cream. And then that's
aspirin cream.
But that's kind of something we're talking about. Is
something that could, you got a choice, you can go one way or the other and use it. A lot of people, when they get a condition in their life, they do two things, right? One, they say, oh, this sucks. I'm dealing with it. And other people say, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's forced me to look at everything in my life, and I've made changes for the better. So this is the best thing ever to happen to me. So there's two choices, and Brian, man, you definitely made the right choice.
Well, thanks.
It's been interesting. Did we miss anything else on your volunteer firefighters? Anything else that you guys do that we didn't talk about that's of service to the community?
Well, I just to add a little bit to the diabetes thing, and I had mentioned before that it really hasn't stopped me, and I'll have to say I was very pleased with the accomplishment of being able to be a successful firefighter and still have metabolic condition that could affect your readiness, shall we say?
Right.
Not to get into the biology of it or anything like that, but right. If your blood sugar levels are too low, because that can happen due to the treatment of taking insulin. You don't want to be crawling through a burning house with all your gear on it. All of a sudden, your blood sugar drops because now you've just added to the problem by a large magnitude. So I was always able to just be right where it needed to be, and you figure out how to be resourceful and have the things with you that can help you, and it never stopped. It's also nice. I guess enjoyed would be the right word, when we would go to diabetic emergency calls, especially for younger kids, and what was really satisfying a couple of times is, like maybe a teenager would have low blood sugar, and a very easy thing to correct when you're doing EMS. But the parents, and then sometimes later on, the patient would be like, they would realize I'd be diabetic because I would usually take the lead on that patient because of my self-experience. Right. Mm-hmm. So I would, they'd go, oh, you're diabetic too. Yeah, I'm diabetic too. Are you type 1? Yeah, I'm type 1. So you kind of share that, you share that bond, right? And then the parents, especially for the younger kids, who, the parents, a younger child develops diabetes, and it's a huge worry for a parent because as a parent, you pretty much have to make yourself diabetic to treat the kid, because a 5-year-old kid is not going to be able to successfully treat his condition on his own. And then the worries, if they don't have any background knowledge of, what it's all about and things like that, you're worried, is my kid going to not have a future? He's going to be limited to only doing X, Y, and Z. And then they see a firefighter come on in, and he's, 50 years old plus, and he's been doing it for a long time. And he's been a diabetic since he's been 22, and he's a firefighter and he has zero restrictions. Like, really? And they go, yeah. You especially nowadays with all the assistance and technology that helps diabetics and other people with other metabolic and similar health conditions along, you really can do it. You just got to put a little bit of effort in, and you can do it. And that was always very satisfying to me. It made me feel really good that I not only treated their patient or their child or whatnot, but made them feel like, hey, this is not any kind of a sentence. I kind of treated the parent as well, and they felt better about being able to let their kid into the world. Like, yeah, hey, if you want to be a firefighter, great. You might not be able to be a commercial airline pilot until the FAA changes the regulations, but you can be a pro athlete. You can do this, you can do that. You can basically do anything you want. And that, along with the hug from grandma's daughter, was very, very satisfying, because I think that's what that was really all about. And then by extension, I kind of do a little bit of that in my regular day job, if you will, as well too, helping others and getting some satisfaction out of that. A lot of satisfaction.
That's awesome. It's my wife is addicted to the Animal Channel, so I have to watch these. When I'm, between writing things or whatever, I see these dog training things, and this one dog trainer just goes, I don't train dogs, I train people. But he's a dog trainer. And that's kind of what you said. It's like, not only you have to work with the person who has that condition, but you have to, more important is to work with the people around them.
Brian Murphy, thanks so much for your stories here on Rock Bottom. We learned a ton. Once again, you can follow or connect with the most interesting Brian Murphy on LinkedIn. Hey, thanks for listening, and check out my website at william-mcpherson.com. building your health and happiness from the ground up.